Hello everyone, it's Old Guardian here. Whizbang's Workshop, the new Hearthstone expansion, is coming in 2 days, and with a new expansion there's going to be new decks for new and returning players as well. And Blizzard gave me a sneak peek of the upcoming decks, so these decks are not yet live. These decks are going to be live in the game on Tuesday when the new expansion launches. But how do you get one of these decks? You get a free deck when you complete Apprenticeship and reach Bronze 10 if you're a new player, or if you skip Apprenticeship if you're a new player, but then you miss out on other rewards, you don't want to do that, and then you start at Bronze 10. Or if you're a returning player, after you return to the game after 90 days of not logging in. Not playing a game doesn't count, you must not have logged into the game for 90 days. These decks are available multiple times, so if you play some games, then you're away for 90 days, come back, you get a deck again. You get to test all the free decks for 1 week. There are loaner decks for a period of 1 week, and after that you choose one of the current ones. So if you're a returning player and you come back to the game right now, it's 2 days now before the expansion arrives, then you will get the loaner decks, which are the old ones, and those are going to switch into the new ones when the new expansion launches, and the one that you will pick to keep will be one of the new ones. If you're a brand new player, then at this moment I would advise to start on Tuesday. Not today, but on Tuesday. Well, you're probably watching this video at a later time, so the expansion is already out, so then it won't matter. But because the new decks that you get from the Apprenticeship experience, there's also some decks there before you get to these decks, then those are instantly picked, and you would want to get the new ones from after the expansion. So for a brand new player, just wait until Tuesday. For a returning player, just come on in. It's a great time to get back into Hearthstone. And the decks are also pretty awesome. So let's take a look at the decks. There are 6 decks overall. Hearthstone has 11 classes, but you're not offered a deck for each class. So unfortunately, if you like one of the classes that doesn't have a deck, then you have to pick one of the ones that does have one. So first one, we have Death Knight. And these are all basically almost meta decks. Like just look at this thing. Well, if you're a new or returning player, you might not know what this thing really looks like. But this is a full meta version of Plague Death Knight, the bane of all sorts of Highlander decks. You shuffle all these plagues into the opponent's deck, and when the opponent draws cards, and then they will get those plagues, and they will take damage from the plagues. And then when you have played Helya, then those plagues are infinite, so then when they draw a plague, they just reshuffle it back to the deck, and eventually they are just going to take tons and tons of damage. So you have a very good inevitability here that's eventually going to kill the opponent if you can stay alive long enough. And this has a pretty good toolset for you to stay alive. This comes with 3 top-tier legendary cards with Helya, Primus, and Reska Pit Boss. And Prison of Yogg-Saron is a free card. It is a legendary card, but everyone gets that one for free, so you get 3 legendary cards. And all of them are top-tier legendary cards for Death Knight class. And then there's a couple of really strong epics too, so you get everything that you need to play Plague Death Knight in this package. It's a top-tier deck. It's a wonderful deck. As for Paladin, there's a funny story, because this deck is almost the same as the previous one, the Showdown in the Badlands one. But Showdown in the Badlands one was a little bit questioned, like it looked like it was going to be Earthen Paladin, but they forgot to include the Earthen cards, Disciple of Amidus and Stoneheart King in the deck. And then we were like, okay, now I would have to play Earthen Paladin, but I don't have the Earthens. But now, this time it is Earthen Paladin, and this time it has Earthens included. So, a step of improvement definitely there. As for Earthen Paladin's strength, Earthen Paladin is not one of the main meta decks in Badlands. Who knows, like, there's a rotation coming, so lots of cards are going out of standard format. It's really difficult to evaluate what cards are going to be absolute top tier in the next expansion, of course. But this one does give you some good Paladin cards. Amidus the Peacekeeper in particular is a card that's used basically in every Paladin deck. This is now an Earthen Paladin deck. It actually has the Earthen synergy cards. And performance-wise, I would expect it to be probably mediocre, but if you enjoy Paladin, then it's not a bad pick. The rogue deck is a Wishing Well rogue, so your main idea here is to get a bunch of stuff from other classes. Wishing Well, after you play a coin, get a random legendary minion from another class and set its cost to 1. So you're going to get a bunch of coins, you're going to get a lot of cards from other classes, you're going to play cards from other classes, and then you have Tess Greymane to repeat those cards from other classes. Tess Greymane is a free legendary, so everyone has access to that anyway. There are 3 legendary cards in this deck. There's Really the Kid, there's Valor Quintblade, and then there's Bounce Around. Drilly and Velarok are top tier rogue legendary cards. They are used in many different rogue decks. Bouncer Road doesn't really see play. Actually, it doesn't see play in any current meta decks at all for rogue. But they have just added a little bit more value to this deck. This deck is a bit of a trickster deck. You're going to get a lot of random stuff from other classes. You're going to play them for cheap. You're going to bounce stuff around. A lot of crazy stuff is going to happen when you play this deck. Strength-wise, it's one of the weakest decks of these returning player decks. Probably the weakest one, but it should still be able to win around half of its games. So it's not completely unplayable. If you really enjoy this kind of playstyle, then by all means, go ahead and pick it up. If you enjoy that playstyle, Rogue is a great class for you, and this is going to give you a lot of cards to do all sorts of tricks. The Shaman deck is a Highlander deck, so it only has singleton copies of all cards, and it comes with some super powerful legendary cards. Reno Lone Ranger is the main Highlander legendary card used in all classes whenever you play a Highlander style deck, because it's just totally bonkers. It's one of the best cards in the game. Dr. Holiday, a wonderful, very strong Highlander legendary card for Shaman class. And then there's Sir Finley the Intrepid. If you excavate it twice, transform any minions into 1/1 Murlocs. Not used that much in Highlander decks, but it is a dual class card, so it also goes into Paladin, and many Paladin decks do use Sir Finley. It's a powerful card. So this deck gives you a lot of building blocks for building Highlander decks. And Highlander decks can be really fun to play. The games are very different because all of your cards are different, so you don't get that sort of consistency, but you have cards that do similar roles so that they are able to answer all kinds of situations. But Highlander decks typically are very expensive to build, because most of the best Highlander decks run a number of legendary cards. Well, when you can only put singleton cards into your deck anyway, then, well, legendary already, you always have to put one copy of those into your deck, so it's just a perfect fit. So it can be very expensive to build Highlander decks, but if Highlander decks are what you want to play, then this can be an excellent choice because of that Reno Lone Ranger. The Warlock deck is a meta Sludge Warlock, so you're going to generate these barrels of sludge, which deal damage to the lowest health enemy when they are destroyed, discarded, or played. You're going to generate those in the bottom of your deck, you're going to generate those in your hand, then you're going to discard them from your hand, you're going to destroy them from the bottom of your deck, you might even play some of those. Fairly aggressive archetype that also has a lot of burst damage, especially in the mid game. Not a ton of value in this deck, because there's only 2 legendary cards in this one, but definitely a playable deck. If you enjoy kind of aggressive playstyle, then this can be very strong. And finally there is the Warrior deck, and the Warrior deck has only changed from last expansion by 2 cards, by getting 2 copies of From the Depths and including Shield Slam and Talon Fordring into the list, so not many changes, because this Warrior deck is already very powerful. It is a armor control warrior, so your win condition is Odin. Battlecry for the rest of the game, after your hero gains armor, they gain that much attack for that turn. So you're trying to control the game, you're trying to survive, you try to play Odin, and then you're trying to get a ton of armor, so that your hero is just going to hit the enemy in the face really hard. And to help you do that, there's Ignis the Eternal Flame, which is a free card, so it doesn't actually contribute to the cost of the deck. Talon is also free, by the way, so this deck only really has 2 legendary cards, Odin and Yogg-Saron. But anyway, Ignis is going to give you a weapon. It's a discovered weapon, so you try to build it from building blocks that you're offered, and at best it's just a wonderful weapon that's just going to help you smack the opponent to the ground. A very strong archetype at the moment, and looks perfectly viable in the upcoming expansion as well. So if you want to play a control style game and you like playing Warrior, yeah, this can be a choice. So in conclusion, all of these decks are playable decks. The Death Knight, Warlock and Warrior are currently the strongest of these decks, and then there's Paladin, Rogue and Shaman, which are a little bit weaker, but they're also playable. If you like playing them, you can pick them, it's totally possible. The most value comes from Shaman and from Death Knight. They have 3 top tier legendary cards each. So Death Knight has 3 Death Knight legendaries, Shaman has a Shaman legendary, a neutral legendary, and then the dual class legendary for Shaman and Paladin. So Shaman gives you the most value for other classes as well, but those cards are for Highlander decks mainly. And Highlander decks are notoriously expensive to build, so if you have a very small collection, it can be difficult for you to build strong Highlander decks, so that can hold you back a little bit. But don't worry, if that's the kind of deck that you want to play, then you should pick Shaman, because you will get all of these cards that help you build those kinds of decks. Other than that, all of these decks give you building blocks for building decks for their particular classes, so it's really about choosing your class to play. Yeah, there are some decks that are a little bit stronger than others, so if you just want results, yeah, that's the way you go. Then Shaman deck with the Highlander team, if you want to play Highlander cards, okay, that's the team that you go for. But other than that, it's just, do I want to play a Warlock? Do I want to play a Rogue? If you do, then you pick that deck and you get some building blocks for also other decks of that class. And the set of decks looks quite strong this time, so it's a great time to come back to Hearthstone. Thank you for watching. Click like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and a special thanks to all of my Patreon supporters, YouTube members and Twitch subscribers who make all of these videos possible.